Welcome. Good morning. Hello. Thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to the live office hours for the School of Sweet Georgia. I'm Felicia Lowe, and I'm the founder and creative director of Sweet Georgia and also the School of Sweet Georgia. So I can see some of you guys in the chat room. Thank you guys so much for being here. Fantastic. I see Sue and I see Rachel. Thank you guys. If you want to leave a comment, you can just pop that into the comment box in the YouTube, on that YouTube page. Nice to see you guys this morning. So if this is your first time joining our live office hours here, welcome. But basically every month, on the last Thursday of every month, I try to sit down and catch up with you about what's been going on inside the School of Sweet Georgia, whether it's sort of new course content or events that have been happening. Lots of things have been happening here, actually. So these live office hours gives us a chance to sort of answer any questions that you might have had in the forums. And yeah, if you have any questions today, if you've brought any questions along with you today, please feel free to pop those into the chat as well. And you can sort of highlight it by saying question, like in all caps at the beginning of your comment, because then it might help me actually see it as I'm looking at the chat and things like that. So good morning. Hi, Pearl. Thanks for being here, you guys. Fantastic. So let's show you what we have going on today. So in today's session, I have a couple of things that I want to talk about that are a little bit new, and these are new things that have been happening in the school here. But basically, we have hired a few new people to join our team this year, and so I wanted to share that with you. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the community events that we have tried to organize for you, and then some upcoming content that we have, and then we have a whole bunch of questions that we're going to answer for you from the forums, the discussion forums as well. And finally, I always like to share things that you've been working on. So you guys have been making such beautiful things, so I want to share those things with you. So first off is that you may have noticed some more people in the forums having some conversations and having some chat, answering more questions and things like that. And so basically what we did is in January, I hired Greta, which I mentioned, I believe, last month, but Greta Cornejo has just joined us. She's been a longtime member of our community and everything like that, but she's joined us to help work with instructors, to help build a lot of the course content that we're trying to create for the school and things like that. And so Greta's come to join us, and I wanted to share a little bit with you about Greta. And also we hired 2 moderators to our team, some community moderators. So first off, I wanted to share with you a little bit about Greta. So you may recognize Greta because she has been for a number of years modeling a lot of the products that we have, a lot of the patterns that we have for Sweet Georgia. But outside of helping us with all of that work, she's actually a spinner. She has started weaving. She is a knitter. She has been, doing a lot of spinning. So I wanted to share some of these photographs with you from her Instagram account here. So you can see her spinning away and then making that yarn into a hat. There is I believe that must be the shift cowl in the middle. I see Greta wearing it and it's really, really lovely. And so I absolutely love it. It just keeps inspiring me to go back and try to make that pattern. It shouldn't be so difficult for me. But yeah, that's one thing that I've been thinking about. And also sweater, that Greta's designed. So sorry, that Greta's knit up. So if you are interested in following Greta on Instagram, I've left her Instagram account in there as well. But you'll see Greta popping up in the forums and being part of those conversations as well. And then the next person that I want to introduce you to is Victoria. So Vicky, V-I-K-K-I. So she has just joined us as a new moderator. And so you'll find Vicky answering a lot of questions and things like that in the discussion forums. She does everything. She does everything from knitting to crochet. She has been spinning since, I think she said since 2015. Yeah, 2015 she's been spinning. And then in 2020, she started weaving with a rigid heddle loom and now has a table loom. And she's also started some punch needle. She also does embroidery, yarn dyeing. You'll see all of this stuff on Vicky's Instagram account. You can just follow all of that feed. But she's been doing a lot of weaving stuff this year and learning a lot of things about like spinning woolen yarn, spinning for a sweater, and things like that. And so if you ever have any questions about weaving or spinning, you can also, pop them into the forum. And if Vicky may get to you quicker than we can. So I'm really, really excited to welcome Vicky to the team. And the next is, I didn't get a photo of Robin until a little bit later, but there is a photo that came out today in the newsletter, and it is about Robin. But Robin has also joined us as a moderator, and so she's going to be helping to, answer questions and things like that. She has been a longtime knitter, and she's been knitting on and off for the past 20 years. And she has 2 young kids, which keep her very, very busy, but she's also doing a lot of knitting around that. And so you can see, I've just shown a little shawl that she's made with this beautiful fade and this gradient going on here. And then also she recently took a brioche class with Bristol Ivy. And so that's one of the projects that she's shown, like a little swatch of some brioche that she's been doing. And then just recently, again in 2020, she started weaving on a rigid heddle loom and very quickly turned around and found herself a 4-shaft table loom. So she's working on that right now. You can see it all warped up and ready to go. So Robin and Vicky are going to both be moderators in the community and helping to answer questions if you have any. Now, one of the things that we wanted to do was for the past many, many months, we've been hosting these meetups on Zoom, and Charlotte from our team, she's the assistant production manager at the studio. She has been leading many of these meetups since April, I think it is, that we've been doing it. And so what we're hoping to do now is we're going to spread them out a little bit. And Charlotte is going to continue to host a knit night on the 2nd and 4th Thursday in the evenings. And so Charlotte is going to host those ones. And so that one sort of morphed out of our physical knit night that used to happen at our studio here in Vancouver. And so a lot of those folks already know each other. They are Vancouver folks for the most part. But you are more than welcome to join and participate in that. That's absolutely no problem. It's open to everyone. And now the Tuesday morning meetups, the Tuesday morning 10 a.m. meetups are going to be hosted by Robin. So Robin been knitting for 20 years. She's going to help lead a lot of those knitting meetups. And then last year we also had a meetup for spinning, specifically just for spinning. And during that call, it was really funny because everybody was like, oh, I wish we could do this more often. I wish we could have a ongoing spinning meetup. And so Vicky is going to help host that for us. So on the 3rd Saturday of every month, we're going to start doing these spinning and weaving meetups. So you can bring your spinning, bring your weaving. She has her, I guess, her camera and her computer set up near her looms. You can bring your spindle, bring your wheel, all of this kind of stuff. And then you guys can sit and spin together for that time. And so we've tried to spread them out so that they're different times of the day, different days of the week. So some are weekdays, some are evenings, some are mornings, some are weekends now. And so trying to spread it out so that everybody can participate in some way. And finally, we always do these live office hours the last Thursday of every month. And they are on right now, on live stream. Fantastic. Thank you guys so much for being here today. So just want to share with you very briefly some of the things that are coming very, very shortly. So I've been talking about the Houndstooth course, and that I am editing it right now. It is so close to being done. I think I'm going to be able to post that in probably very early next week. Hopefully Monday it'll get all posted, but I have to write the patterns and things like that so that everything is available. But there's a little bit of a preview there for you to see what the pattern looks like. Well, what 2 of the patterns, there's actually 5 patterns. That's why it's taking a little bit longer. But those are 2 of the projects that are in that particular workshop. I'm going to show you really quickly. I have them here right in front of me. So basically, this is one of the scarves. This is one of the Houndstooth scarves that came out of that project. So this is an 8-shaft Houndstooth scarf. And using that same setup, we've made this Houndstooth scarf. So using gradient sock blanks to make this one. So just a little preview, and hopefully the lesson for that will be available very shortly, hopefully on Monday. It's all tied up right now. I made all of this on the spring loom. It's tied up right now. It's set at 15 ends per inch. I could tie on another scarf. I could, or I could make something else. I read recently, Tom Knisley, who writes for Interweave Handwoven magazine, I think it is, Handwoven magazine. He's been a long time weaving instructor. And he wrote something recently about how he never makes the same thing twice. And every time he comes to the loom, he's like warping up different things, dressing the loom completely from scratch every time. And I just thought it was so interesting because for the past year, the only way that I've been able to really be able to make a lot of weaving projects is by completely always tying on to the same leftover warp from before. So I will leave those ends and then I'll tie on the next project. And I really consider what can go on the loom next after those projects. Kind of always trying to, keep a bit of a template. And it was interesting to read his article about how he's like, no template, just always start from scratch, always make something new. And so I've been thinking a little bit about that and my process and other people's process. I'm interested to hear what you guys think. Like, would you get bored making the same sort of thing over and over again, even though what we're doing is kind of like experimenting and exploring different ways of working with color? I kind of feel like you can do that with a very simple template, everything threaded straight draw or on a point draw or something like that. But there's so many things that you can do with that framework and that setup already. So I don't necessarily feel like I have to completely take everything off the loom and dress it again from scratch. But anyways, that is kind of what is coming very, very soon. Yeah, Rachel's saying, I think it depends on what you're trying to learn. And I think in a lot of cases, like I'm trying to see, well, what happens if I do this with the color? What happens if I do this with the yarn? And I could make this again with boucle yarn. I could make it with textured yarn. I could make it with thicker yarn and just like reslay it. And so even though I finished already 5 or 6 of these handwoven sort of houndstooth scarves, I'm still thinking about the next thing that could be made. Like, could make this into a wider fabric and make this into a skirt. This could definitely work with that. So lots of things to think about. I think that we're all sort of fall on different ends of the spectrum in terms of, how much we want to play with color and texture versus how much we want to play with different weave structures and see how different things work that way. So yeah, I think we all fall on this continuum. Yeah. So the next things that we have been filming for the past couple of weeks. These are all filmed. They just need to be edited now. But I sort of did another class that talks about knitting specifically with hand-dyed yarns. And so it was a lot of content from the book that I wrote a couple years ago now, but the book was called Dying to Spin and Knit, and there was a whole section on how to knit with hand-dyed yarn. Like, what do you do with hand-painted yarn? What do you do with yarn that's going to pool? What do you do with gradient yarn? All sorts of things like that. How do you work with color palettes? And so that's just a little snapshot from one of the lessons in this new course. And yeah, so that is going to be coming out very soon. It's a little bit kind of like an extension on color play. The original color play was supposed to be very, very concise and very short. The whole thing is only 26 minutes for all the lessons. And so I wanted to really expand on that and go more into depth into all those things. And then the other part is spinning intentional color, which is kind of the spinning aspect of the book. So a lot of the things that I had previously taught in an old craftsy class, so we're kind of like revisiting that with new samples and expanding on that a little bit more. So also making bats and fun things like that. So you can see there is a bat that I carded on a drum carder, now spinning on an e-spinner. I actually finished spinning all of it and I'm knitting it into a swatch right now. So I'll be able to show that to you as well very, very shortly. So those are some of the courses that are coming up. And then I wanted to very quickly also mention that we have a couple of other instructors who are scheduled to come in and film some other courses as well. And so we have Charlotte from the studio who is going to be working with a blending board to then make wet felted fabric, which can then be used for a whole bunch of different purposes. So Charlotte is going to be filming her very, very first class with us in just a couple of weeks or so, very, very soon. And then the next thing is that I ordered in a huge box of these dies from Botanical Colors. So you may be able to see that. That is a bag of cochineal bugs. So cochineal natural dye. It's an insect. Cochineal is an insect that makes sort of a magenta, a red kind of color. It's a natural dye. And then here we have some logwood as well. But I am not going to be teaching that natural dye class. We've actually invited Caitlin French. She's a local instructor, local dyer, local yarn maker here in Vancouver, Caitlin French. And she's going to come and film with us at the end of March to film this natural dye class. And we're very, very excited about this. She just came by a couple days ago to pick up some yarn, pick up some dyes and all this kind of stuff. And so she's going to start dyeing some samples using the natural dyes, and we'll be able to do all that together. Very, very excited about finally being able to offer that natural dye content. I have more to tell you, but I just can't tell you yet, but very, very soon. So let's do some of the questions that you guys sent. So these are some questions that were on the discussion forums. And so I want to make sure that everybody has answers for these. So this one is a question about the effect of the number of plies in weaving from Jessica. And she's saying, as a new weaver, I finally decided to take the plunge and get a loom. I'm coming from the knitting world, and I have to say it's confusing as the yarn sizes, she's saying basically that the weaving yarns are very confusing. The yarn sizes for weaving are very confusing, but it's great that the number of plies are included as part of the size. So yes, if you have any questions about like yarn sizes for weaving yarns, there is a lesson called Yarn Nomenclature in the Essential Weaving course that we have on the school, and that describes how weaving yarn is named. And so it always does include the number of plies. So if it's a 2-ply yarn or a 3-ply yarn or a 12-ply yarn, it will indicate that as part of the name of that weaving yarn. She says, I know that the number of plies can greatly influence the end result of a knitting project. And I'm guessing it's also true, but in different ways for weaving. So I've noticed that most weaving yarns are 2-ply. Are 2-ply yarns generally best for weaving? How would weaving with a 3-ply or a 4-ply change the fabric? Or are plies not as big of a thing in weaving? And so I think that really just depends on what you want to make. So if your cloth needs to be thicker and more hard-wearing, like a rug or something like that, then the more plies you have will make that yarn more structurally sound and more durable. And so we do have a lesson in the Spinning from Scratch course, and it's called Plying Yarns. And around sort of the 1.5 minute mark, there's an illustration, and I talk about the roundness of a 2-ply yarn, a 3-ply yarn, and a 4-ply yarn. And so when you look at the cross section of a plied yarn, the 2-ply yarn looks like an oval. It looks more flat, whereas a 3-ply yarn, you can imagine those 3 plies are sort of, if you cut the cross section of that, they would be in sort of more like a triangle, so a little bit more round. And then a 4-ply yarn would again be like a square and even more round. And so the more round they are, the more full, and the flatness of a 2-ply yarn sort of makes thinner fabric. It makes more drapey fabric. It makes fabric that is more likely to stay flat and nice and soft and fluid and drapey. A 3-ply yarn, like you would typically use in knitting for like an Aran weight sweater, is meant to be a little bit more bulky, a little bit more robust, a little bit more firm in a lot of ways. And so when you weave that together, you would get quite different cloth. I feel like with a 2-ply yarn, you get more of a loose and drapey and fluid kind of fabric, whereas with a 3-ply or 4-ply yarn, weaving that, you get a little bit more of a firm, robust fabric as well. So that's something that you can definitely give a try. You can warp up your loom and try different things just to see how it feels for you. But in the photo that I have here, this is basically some 2-ply 2-ply handspun and 2-ply lace weight. And the end result of that scarf coming off of the loom is very silky and drapey and fluid, and I feel like it is because of the fineness of the yarns, but also a combination of the fact that it is 2-ply yarn. It's all 2-ply yarn, and it can also have a little bit to do with the set being a little bit of a looser set, so it's not super firm or anything like that too. Pearl is asking if I will be doing a rug weaving session very soon. And so I wish that I could show you what is currently on my baby wolf loom right now. I do have it set up for Croquebracht, and we have we are going to be working with an instructor who is, I don't know if I can tell you yet, but we are going to be doing Croquebracht later on this year. It is coming. But I have it, it's on my loom right now. I just don't like the colors, and so I don't want to take a picture of it yet. But I am picking colors, and then we'll be working up something so that it's looking nice, and then we can talk about rug weaving for sure. But weaving this this little bit of Croquebracht on the baby wolf loom, I wanted to move it to the loom because I wanted it to be easier for me to treadle. I'd been practicing with Croquebracht, but always in a table loom format, and so having to flip all the levers and things like that, I really wanted to switch to a floor loom where I could just work it with my legs. And so that has been great, but I do notice that with the baby wolf loom, it doesn't pack the weft down as quickly or as firmly as I'd like for a rug. And so I find I have to beat it like 2 or 3 times in order to get it to the place where I need it to be. And so yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll move the rug to the mirror loom. I think that might work better as well, because it's a much heavier beat on that loom. So that is a great question. Pearl, you can let me know what kind of a rug you're interested in weaving, like maybe what kind of a yarn you want to use for weft, how big of a rug you might be thinking. You could definitely use a lot of the tapestry techniques that Jana has been teaching. You could use that to make a rug for sure, because it would be weft faced, packed down really well. It would be really durable, all of that. The next question I have is about dyeing roving. So this is from Sherry, and she says, I've just started the dyeing intentional color course, and while mentioning various fiber types, you said something about using roving, and it seemed you didn't think that it was the best idea to dye roving. Is that right? I have bags and bags of roving from our sheep and alpaca, which is mostly 60% BFL and 40% alpaca that I wanted to dye. I suspect it will give a heathered appearance, since I know alpaca doesn't take dyes nearly as well as wool. Would you suggest that it would be better for me to consider dyeing it after I've spun it all up? So yeah, I mean, there's definitely 2 different options that you have for working with your fiber. You can absolutely spin up all your yarn and then dye it afterwards, and then you have different avenues open to you. So you could make that into hand-painted yarn, low water immersion dyed yarn, all of that kind of stuff. Everything that we do in the yarn course is, in the dyeing course, is available after you've spun your fiber into yarn. But I think that a lot of things can be done with dyeing fiber on its own. You just have to be a little bit more careful. So no matter what that fiber is when you're dyeing with it, dyeing, loose fiber and having it float around in a pot of nearly boiling water is kind of a recipe for getting that fiber all matted and possibly felted. And so that's the part of it that I feel like you have to be super careful about. And so with that, it's just a matter of handling your fiber in a very gentle and delicate way. So you have to wash it and scour it ahead of time to make sure that it's clean, so that the dyes can actually bind to it and adhere to it. So that whole washing process you have to be really delicate about. But the BFL I think should scour very easily. Should be pretty clean. Alpaca, I've actually used alpaca fiber without, like, just raw alpaca fiber without actually having washed it, and it was not particularly dirty because it's not greasy, it's just dusty. And so if you just kind of like almost have like a quick rinse with that, not with running water or anything like that, but if you just submerge it in water and sort of get rid of a little bit of that excess dust and then move it to some clean water again, then it should be pretty well ready for dyeing in that way. And so mixing those two together, I think would make a really, really lovely, lovely sounding yarn. It sounds like it would be soft and glossy and warm. It sounds like it would be really lovely. You might notice in that dyeing intentional color course that I was dyeing a lot of things in a more shallow pan. So I was dyeing it in a pan that's about this high. And so that allows me to sort of see the fiber also so that the fiber doesn't, move vertically back and forth in this big giant stock pot and cause that possible felting situation. So I think that if you're just very, very careful with the amount of water, the amount of movement, just to prevent all that felting from possibly happening when you're dyeing roving, I think you'll be perfectly fine dyeing up that blend. It sounds like it would be really, really lovely. I would love to see what you do with that, how you dye it. It would be great for like low water immersion dyeing, and then you spin that together and it could make a kind of a heathered, mottled, really lovely yarn actually. So the next question is from Elaine, and Elaine was asking about slowing down her wheel. She wanted to buy some other things to slow down her wheel. She says, "Hi, I have a very old Ashford traditional spinning wheel that I've had for a few years, and I'm happy enough with it. And I've considered buying a new wheel, but I'm wondering if all I really need is a new flyer, either a basic jumbo flyer or a standard flyer. I want to be able to slow down my spinning and have more control over the speed of my spinning. And I could also really use some bigger bobbins. I think I'd have to buy a jumbo flyer because I don't think they fit the flyer now on the wheel. So has anyone purchased a new flyer for your Ashford spinning wheel, and can you let me know your experience?" So I think this question is actually two different things here. There is the flyer situation with your wheel. And so I think that you're saying two things actually. One thing is about the speed. The other thing is about the bobbins. I think that you're looking for bobbins that can hold more yarn. That's why you want the bigger bobbins. You want the jumbo flyer and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, the bigger bobbins, you need a bigger flyer in order to hold that bigger bobbin. So you just have to make sure that whatever flyer you get is matched with whatever bobbins you plan to get. So there's that whole situation. That's totally fine. You want to buy a new flyer for your wheel, upgrading it, that's totally fine. But the aspect about slowing down your spinning is not really related to the flyer itself. The slowing down your spinning is more affected by how quickly you treadle. That's one. And then also what size of whirl you're using, what diameter of whirl you're using. So basically what your ratio is. If you have a very, very small whirl, then your ratio is going to be very fast, and then you're going to be putting twist into your yarn very, very quickly, which I think is what you're trying to prevent. You want to put in less twist for the amount of time that you're spinning. And so in order to do that, you can either move to a larger whirl if that's available and if that's possible on your spinning wheel, or you really need to slow down your treadling. I know I absolutely have this problem. I tend to treadle very quickly, and so I find very often that the yarn that is being spun, sometimes it's a little bit overspun. It has more twist than I should be putting into it. And so it is just a matter of trying to consciously slow down your body and slow down your treadling so that you're putting in less twist at a time. You can do that slowing down your feet, or you can speed up your hands so that your hands move a little bit quicker, or you can look at adjusting those ratios on your spinning wheel. So if it is available for you. I'm not sure if a very, 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 very old Ashford traditional has. I'm pretty sure it must have at least more than one ratio on that to adjust. So to be able to go to a slower ratio versus a faster ratio. So I hope that helps. And our last question here is about knitting a superwash sweater. So Joan was asking a question here about what are the pros and cons of using a superwash DK yarn for a sweater. I swatched with the yarn several years ago, but then I realized that I need or want to swatch again since my gauge could be different now. So swatching aside, what do you think? To use this superwash for a sweater or not? What things should I consider prior to knitting? What allowances, if any, should I make? What can I expect from the fabric? Will it grow? The bottom line is, would this superwash DK be a good yarn for a cardigan? And then she followed up again with another email asking also any tips about wet blocking before putting the pattern pieces together will be helpful. I wet blocked my swatch today and noticed that it seemed to stretch out quite a bit. I carefully coaxed it back to a more natural shape, and the sweater pieces will be considerably heavier after wet blocking, and I don't want to do something dumb, she says. And she says, as an aside, I absolutely loved swatching with the superwash DK. Okay, so this question about whether or not to use this particular yarn for a sweater or not. I think that what you're suggesting is the best way to go about doing this, is that you need to swatch again. So you should swatch again to see what your gauge is like nowadays. Maybe, things have changed since the last time you swatched. The other thing that I can really recommend, and I learned this when I took a workshop with Josh Bennett. He's a knitwear designer from New York. And he just taught us to make really big swatches. Like make a swatch that's like this big, 12 inches by 12 inches or 14 inches by 14 inches, however big, but big swatches, not like little swatches. If you knit a little swatch like this, it's not necessarily going to give you all of the information that you need to get out of that particular yarn. When you make a big swatch, it shows more of the characteristics of what that yarn will be like once it's made into a larger cloth. And so that way you can figure out what your sweater is going to be like from a larger swatch. So you'll figure out, does this grow? Does your superwash yarn, does any yarn, does it stretch out? Does it bloom? How does it behave after you block it? All of these things you need to know. And so swatching is super important in this case. Make a big swatch. Joan is asking about tips for wet blocking before putting the pattern pieces together. So generally, many of the tutorials that both Tabitha and I have put together have been about the importance of swatching and blocking and measuring your gauge and all these kinds of things. And so with the wet blocking, what I would do with a swatch is you knit it up and then you go and you measure it before and then measure it after you wet block it. So you're going to wash it in the wash and then wring out all of the excess and then just let it dry the way it is. So don't touch it. I wouldn't necessarily stretch it out. I wouldn't try to make it fit a certain size. Don't try to compress it or coax it back into the shape that you think or the size that you think it should be. Just really let it be itself. And then you can measure and compare what the difference is before and after. So then if you think that you knit it to 10 inches and then you washed it and actually became 12 inches, then you know that you have to make those accommodations in your pattern. So either changing or modifying your pattern a little bit. So if it asks you to knit 10 inches from the armhole down to the bottom and then you go and you wash your sweater and it becomes 12 inches, you would know that kind of thing if you had made this swatch beforehand. So make the large swatch, wet block it. Don't try to make it fit into any particular size. Just measure it after it's dry so that you know how it changes from before to after. And then you can make your decisions about whether or not you want to use that yarn for that project or if you have to make many modifications or anything like that. The thing about the superwash is we make lots and lots of superwash sweaters, and it hasn't necessarily been a problem. I think the only place where it might be a little bit challenging is if you're wanting to do things like color work or steeking and you want to make sure that the yarns don't come apart or anything like that, or that they don't loosen and come apart. There are definitely ways that you can stabilize a superwash yarn if you are going to be using it for a color work project. But we have used superwash yarns for sweaters and it has worked. But it's up to you to decide if you like using that particular yarn to make your sweater. And hopefully you will know if you spend the time making that big swatch, and then you'll have a better idea about what that fabric's going to be like. I hope that's helpful here. Joan is here in the chat right now, and she's asking, your cowl was pretty. It looks soft and cozy, great drape and pattern. So yeah, this is actually the 5x5 cowl that we have a workshop about in the school as well. And it's actually 3 different yarns held together. So I think it was 2 strands of a Cash Luxe Spark, so sparkly cashmere-based fingering weight yarn, and then mixed with Silk Mist, which is like a mohair and silk, very, very fine cobweb lace yarn sort of thing. Sue is saying, always swatch and watch. Always swatch and wash the swatch as you plan to wash your garment. This is where you then measure from, not right off the needles. Yes. So yeah, make sure that you make your swatch and then cast off, and then you can wash it before, measure it before, wash it, measure it after. Yeah, don't measure it from your needles. There's so much distortion that can happen there. Yeah, big swatch. About 12 by 12 is a good swatch, 10 by 10, something like that. And then it just gives you more information, better information. Yeah, if you try to extrapolate something from a really small, like when I sometimes make gauge swatches, I'm like, oh, I'll just figure it out. I'll just do a little test and just check that my gauge is okay, and I'll knit like this much. And it's not enough to really give you a good sense of whether or not it's going to work or not. Thank you. Thanks for the question, Joan. So now I want to share with you guys some of the projects that you have been making and sharing with us in the forums. And so many of these things, Robin and Vicky were highlighting for me as they were going through the forums. They were like, oh, you got to show this. This looks amazing. This looks fantastic. And so I don't know if Rachel is still here, but we are sharing some of the things that Rachel has made and posted in the forums recently. So there was last month and the month before, we've been talking about Catherine Steely's Huck projects. She's been making Huck dish towels in beautiful colors, lots of different colors, and trying different things with that. And so we were all having this conversation about whether or not to make Huck, and Rachel went ahead and she did that. So you can see up here in the top right-hand corner, there is a blanket here that is it's a small lap blanket that she wove from the Advent skeins that she spun. So basically, if you follow Rachel, she had an Advent spinning calendar, and every day she would spin the fiber that came out of that Advent kit. And then finally, she put all of that yarn together to make this beautiful blanket. So this is just like a small little snippet of that blanket, but it's looking very, very cool. And then the other thing which you guys might be familiar with is in this corner here, this is the Radiant Towel project that we made in episode 2 of Handwoven Color. And it was all about optical mixing and about how all these colors mix and blend together to make new colors and all of this kind of stuff. And so she started making these dish towels and has made them, I think, to give as gifts. And then she adapted that same pattern and the same technique to use her handspun, and this is a silk handspun, to make this beautiful scarf up here. So there's 2 shots of the scarf up here. And so, yeah, saying that if you want to find Rachel's work, you can find it on Instagram at Welford Pearls. But she's also saying here in the chat that you have more photos now on your Ravelry page. Hadn't taken any photos yet, but have now. Nice. Fantastic. So it's very, it's very cool, because I think I popped into Rachel's live stream the other day where she just started talking about these towels, and I was like, what? Oh, I recognize those towels. Yeah, it's very surreal. And this one I wanted to share with you guys as well. This is Diane Lowe. I believe we shared her projects in a previous live office hours, but she had been weaving the color field scarf on her rigid heddle loom, and then she's just now made the color gamp shawl on, again, that shacked flip rigid heddle loom. These are set at 12 ends per inch, and she used party of 5 sets. So she's saying she used the jelly bean set, which is an orange to pink gradient, the sea to sky, which is a blue to green gradient, and whisper, which is a purple to blue gradient. And then she said she swapped out one of the sapphire mini skeins for lemon curd, because I think none of those mini skeins has a yellow in there. So she popped some yellow into the mix, and then she added some ultraviolet to the frame, which is what we did in that color gamut class as well. But this turned out beautifully. So she said that the 2.67 yard warp ended up being a little bit short for 4 repeats, and so she stopped at 3 repeats. I think I stopped at 3 repeats as well for that same shawl. And so she says, if I ever make this again, I'll use a 3-yard warp to get a little bit more length out of it. That is lovely. So yeah, if you want to follow her, I've put Diane's Instagram account there as well. And then this one is by Laureline. So you can see Jana is in the back here on the iPad, but Laureline is sort of working through the most recent tapestry course that we put up. It's called Techniques of Tapestry, and Jana is teaching about blending different colors in columns. So you can see here Laureline's working with the green across this section, and then she's working with the blue across this section, and then a pink. So 3 colors, and blending them together to make different columns. So theoretically, with these 3 colors, when she finally finishes this sampler, it will show 5 different colors, because the 2 colors where they overlap, they create a new color. And so this is coming along really, really well. It's looking so nice. That Murex loom is so adorable. Really lovely. So I can see Laureline's put a piece of paper into her loom so that I guess it helps her see the warp threads a little bit easier. So it's a big black piece of paper so that she can sort of, see those warp threads easier, and provides a little bit more contrast there. But that is looking really, really lovely. And another tapestry piece. This is from Valerie Weber. So Valerie, if you're not familiar with Valerie, she is a crochet designer, and she makes finished crochet goods, and they are stunning and so beautiful. You can find her work on her Instagram account here, but she also has an Etsy shop where she produces a lot of these beautiful crocheted products. But she's just started learning how to weave, I guess, very recently. So she's been doing some other kinds of weaving, like on a rigid heddle loom as well, but now starting tapestry. So she said this is her very, very first tapestry piece. She says, I've been trying my hand at tapestry weaving, freeform style. I've been watching the videos and trying to try out some of the techniques I've been learning. For this landscape, I chose to do a mountain so I could practice some color changes and slopes. So you can see here, basically these warps don't go all the way to the end. It's a little bit of this eccentric weaving where there's a little bit of a freeform flow to it. There's curves going on in here and things like that. And so she said, then filling in the negative space on either side of the mountains. This is not perfectly done, as it is literally my first try at tapestry weaving. The fluffy clouds were done using a loop technique that I wanted to add some texture to the tapestry, and various colors of blue making up the sky. And she says, I have to say, I really enjoyed making this freeform, no pictures, just off the top of my head, and learned how not to do some things, but also success in other things. And so I can't wait to try another one. So that is beautiful for the first try ever. That's looking really fantastic. And I love how you can just immediately see that these are clouds just from the texture that's been added by that little loop technique. But this is looking really, really great, and just can't wait to see what you make for your next one. It's so pretty. And it's packed down really nicely, so you can't see any of the weft yarn, any of the warp yarn at all. It's just, it's very, very, very nice. It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. And this one is with Helen. Helen is working on another project. You can actually see she's finished, she's working on a top-down sweater right now. And so she was working with these 2 balls of yarn, taking a look at all of these different skeins and how they've been dyed, and trying to hold 2 strands of the hand-painted yarn together to prevent pooling in her finished sweater. So if you go onto her Instagram account, you can see this top-down sweater. I think she's down to below the armholes now. And it's coming along beautifully, and you can see how the colors have mixed and blended while she's been holding 2 strands together to make those colors mix together a little bit more. But it looks like a really nice cloth coming together right there. Yeah, beautiful. I should also share with you, I'm going to share with you We'll just take 1 minute here. Helen, if you did not know, also makes fiber arts tools. She makes spindles. She makes supported spindles. And so I ordered one from her the other day and she sent it with these beautiful things. This is a beautiful handmade walnut bowl for the supported spindle. And here is the supported spindle that I got from Helen. You can find it. It's all on her Instagram account, Maudsley Fiber Arts. But this is beautiful. I haven't had a chance to try using it yet, but you can see there's a magnet at the bottom here. And so that is the lovely supported spindle set here. And then she also sent some other goodies too, including this is a nostopine. So basically you use this to wind a center pull ball. So you put your yarn on here and then you wind and then you just keep winding until the whole thing comes off and then you have the yarn in the center and you can pull it out the middle. I usually have always done that with my finger, but this is a much nicer way of doing it. It is beautifully handmade as well. And finally, she sent a lovely shawl pin so that you can put that into your stuff. So if you are in need of fiber arts tools, you can go check out Helen as well. Helen is also going to be coming and doing some content with us this year talking about fiber arts tools and the considerations that she makes as she makes these tools. It's going to be a very, very interesting conversation. So I'm really, really looking forward to Helen presenting about that as well this year. So thank you so much, Helen. These are beautiful. And we have, I think, 2 more slides here, but I wanted to post this one. This is Rachel Gardner, who is a member of our community. She's a member of the school, and she has been doing lots and lots, and she has the most extensive learning plan you will see on the community. She has a lot of fantastic ideas, so many ideas. And so just this year, she started weaving. So there's been a lot of conversations about like which weaving loom to get and all sorts of things like that. And she has here a borrowed 32-inch Kromsky Harp rigid heddle loom and is doing her very first weaving ever. And so I just wanted to share this with everybody and just congratulate you on starting your little weaving journey here. This is fantastic. And I'm just looking at those 2 lovely shuttles in the background on your weaving. And she says there's the Handy Woman Slim rigid heddle shuttle. So I'm looking into shuttles now because they are so, so pretty. And I love the woods that they are made in. Very, very pretty. Yeah, looking fantastic. Thank you so much. And this is the last slide. I think this is by Paige. So Paige recently shared a couple of projects that she's been working on. The first is a sweater that she knit for her son for Christmas. And the second here is a brioche project that she's working on right now. And so you can see this is so cool because it's 2 different gradient yarns, and the gradient yarns are like fading through the brioche. So one color that is kind of the foreground of the brioche has a gradient to it, and the other color that's the background of the brioche has also a fade to it. So it's like 2 things fading all at the same time. Looks absolutely fantastic. And then finally, this little square here is her very first weaving as well. So she's working with a table loom, and that looks like a twill that she's working with. And yeah, just lots and lots of brand new weavers right now. Just everybody starting to explore a little bit more about weaving. So yeah, that is basically it for today. If you guys have any other questions, you can feel free to pop those into the chat right now. Fantastic. But yeah, I'm really, really excited about everything that's happening in the school right now. We have so much content that's kind of like waiting in the wings, and we're just going through and trying to edit it all very, very quickly so that way we can get it out to you as soon as we can. And yeah, we recorded 3 courses in 3 weeks in the studio here, and it's left the studio in a bit of like explosion. Like there's fiber everywhere. And so I'm hoping to like tidy that up either today or tomorrow. And yeah, so that we can prepare for the next instructor who's going to come in here and do some teaching. The next instructor who's coming in here is actually coming in not next week. Oh, is it next week? It is next week. It is next week. It's going to be Rachel's going to be coming in next week to do some filming with us, and then we'll have her content out to you guys very shortly as well. So exciting. So that is all happening, and I just absolutely welcome you guys to participate in the community forums there. Now we have Vicky there, we have Robin there, Charlotte's always there, I'm there, and Greta's there. And so if you have any questions as you're moving through any of these projects, any questions that you might have, please feel free to pop them in there and share that. And as always, I'm totally interested in hearing about what it is that you might like to learn. And so I've been reading a lot of the feedback, all of the member surveys, all of these kinds of things, just to make sure that we're continuing to develop content in the direction where you guys are interested, where your interest lies, and what you're hoping that we can provide. So always looking forward to that. You can always reach out to me, to anybody on the team with those ideas. So thank you guys so much for watching. Of course, if you guys want to find us, you probably all know our information as well, but Joan is also saying, how would you describe the color attributes of the colorway Sapphire in DK Superwash? The ball band on this yarn recommends alternating skeins for optimal color blending. Best way of doing this. So Joan is asking about something like a color like Sapphire, which is a semi-solid, solid color, and in the DK Superwash. And we always recommend that you alternate skeins. We always recommend that you alternate skeins, because even if two skeins come out of the same dye pot at the same time, they can still present slightly differently. So to get the best overall blending of colors, blending two colors, alternating between two skeins is the absolute minimum. Ideally, you want to alternate between at least 3 skeins at a time if possible. So basically you take one ball and then you knit across one row, take the second ball, knit across the next one, and then come back to the beginning, attach a third ball and knit across, and then when you come back to this side, you just keep alternating between the balls that are available, the last one that was used, or the one that has not been used, you pull that up and then start working with it so that you can alternate between 3 different skeins at a time, and that produces the best overall blending. There was one time where I was making a sweater out of Superwash DK with a whole bunch of seconds. Seconds are basically where we've made a mistake with the dyeing or something like that. Something irregular has happened. And so I took, I think, 5 or 6 skeins of this Superwash DK yarn, and I alternated all 5 skeins at the same time. So like 5 balls of yarn floating around, and then just picking up the one that has not been used for a long time. So always like alternating one strand of each one. And that, I feel like, is the best way of incorporating all the different colors, even if they came out of the same dye lot, even if they came out of the same dye pot. It's still something that we encourage you to do. So I hope that helps, Joan. I'd be really interested to see your sweater when you get started with that. I think it'll be great. Fantastic. Thank you guys. So this is where you can find us if you need our information: SweetGeorgiaYarns.com, schoolofsweetgeorgia.com, and then our Instagram accounts as well. And if you need to reach us by email, you can find that there as well. So thank you guys so much for being here today. I'm glad that everybody came to participate, and thank you so much for asking your questions. So I will see you guys. In the next one, next month. Actually, next month we might have to figure out the right day for it, because I think next month might be falling on a spring break at the same time. So we'll see. But yeah, I would like to see everybody at the end of March. Thank you guys for being here. I will see you guys in the next one. All right, bye. Have a great day.